students. I'm here for part 2 of the True Confessions of Profe. If you're one of the people that couldn't bear to even press start on my incredibly long video from last time, what I'm doing is I am confessing, sharing stories of times when I was racist or when I experienced and saw my white privilege at work. And for those of you who are like, well, that's weird, why are you doing this? I think that, and I touched on this briefly, that public confession is something that is really important, both for just bearing witness and recognizing the harm caused to other people. And it's also something we see in the Bible everywhere, right? Like King David, like, what about wailing and dressed in ashcloth and ashes? And Paul's telling everybody that he's the worst of sinners. This is something that we do every time someone gets baptized, when it's not an infant baptism anyway. You know, we talk about, here are my sins, and this is how I'm saved from them, but this is what they are. So anyway, that's why I'm doing this. The story I want to tell right now is something that happened when I was in college, studying abroad in Spain. And I studied abroad with my dearest friend. I'm going to call her Anna. And we just clicked, just really understood each other. And we had so much fun scampering around Madrid. And we would go to museums and sit in cafes and sketch and read and go meandering through these beautiful old streets, and just had so much fun. And one of the things that we liked to do was stop at the book-stalls that were along the streets in different areas, and we just kind of look at the pictures, see if there were any hidden treasures. I did sometimes find some really cool books, and so we were doing that one day. And some important information for you to know as I start this story is that Anna is Asian. And there was a time when I would have said, well, what does that matter? She's my friend, and I'm white, she's Asian, but why is that relevant to, to anything? It's our hearts that are connected, not our skin color. Okay, so, all right, let's hear the story now. So I remember one day we were at one of these little book-stalls, and I was flipping through, looking at the illustrations, and just, thanking God for how blessed I was that I was just in this beautiful moment with my best friend, and just kind of filled with joy and contentment. While I was doing this, at the moment that I was flipping through these books, thinking all these lovely thoughts, my friend Anna was being harassed because she's Asian. The owner of the bookstall was following her very closely, all up in her space, and I think she was saying things like, you're Chinese and you're trying to steal stuff, and making hissing noises, and my friend was just trying to ignore her, just ignoring her and doing her thing. And she reached out to look at a book, and the owner of the stall actually slapped her, hit her hand, and was like, no, get out of here, and saying all kinds of awful, awful things. Meanwhile, me. I'm over there like touching books, not putting them back in the right spot, just doing my thing, completely unwatched, right? Totally ignored. And thinking about how wonderful everything is. Oh, this is just such a romantic moment. I'm with my friend, I'm looking at books, and this is happening to Anna. And I'm not noticing any of it. I am so lost in myself that I don't see or hear any of this happening. So eventually Anna comes up and she says to me, visibly upset with tears in her eyes, "Let's go." And I'm like, okay, let's move on to the next book stall. No idea. And as we move away, my friend is like, "Hey, like, did you see that?" And there's hurt in her face because I hadn't said anything, I hadn't done anything. And I was genuinely completely shocked. Like, what? This happened? What? How can this be? What are you talking about? I can't believe she said that. I can't believe she did that. That is so wrong. I'm so sorry. I'd had no idea. And I actually called my friend right before recording this to check with her if it was okay that I shared this story. And she remembered what had happened with that woman in the bookstall. She remembered the whole thing instantly. But in her memory, I hadn't been with her. And she'd been alone. She was like, "Oh, I didn't know you had been there with me." And wow, that is damning on me. That really shows that even though I was physically with her just a few feet away, I was not present with her in any of the ways that mattered. I wasn't standing between her and this woman. I wasn't there supporting her. I was oblivious, completely oblivious. And my privilege gave that to me. I'm able to go to a bookstall and enjoy myself and not worry about being harassed. And I didn't even know that I had to worry about my friend being harassed and hit. Right? That's not even something that registers in my world. I was oblivious. I was completely oblivious. And I wasn't there for her. And if she hadn't trusted me, if she'd thought that I would have underplayed it and been like, "Oh, well, at least she didn't really hurt you, so I guess it's not a big deal." Or if I'd been like, "Well, did that really happen? Maybe your Spanish isn't that good. Maybe that's like a slur in English, but not in Spanish." I could have done that. If she had feared those reactions from me, she wouldn't have told me. And I never would have known at all that this had happened right in front of me. And throughout my relationship with Anna, as we graduated, as we started working together in the same city, I started learning that I had thought that racism was, kind of like ended with the civil rights movement in the late 60s, and that, maybe there are a couple like really bad apples, right? We use that phrase. A couple here and there, a few people who are just really evil, but mostly it's okay now. And what I learned from Anna is she actually faces racism all the time. She had students muttering slurs and other offensive things based on her ethnicity when she'd be walking through the halls. She, one time, had an incident where she was on her bike and she was followed by a group of teenagers who were shouting slurs and racist things at her and throwing rocks at her and like trying to knock her off her bike and trying to hurt her. And she was so scared. I never had anything like that happen to me ever. And I have made really poor safety choices. So I have seen, well, actually, no, I did not see any of this. I was oblivious. I was told. I have learned that this has been something that she has always encountered, and it's not rare at all. So, sort of my takeaway, or what I realized reflecting on this, I think about that time at the bookstall and I wonder how many other things have happened right in front of my face. How many other acts of racism and harassment and violence have happened that I haven't even noticed. I mean, that happened to my best friend, just literally like feet away from me. And I was oblivious, completely oblivious. And I think that as white people, we shouldn't just discount stories from Black people, Native American people, Asian people, and say like, well, I've never seen this. That kind of thing doesn't happen in my community, or it doesn't happen often. Because maybe you're just not seeing it. Maybe you're just not noticing it. Because it's out there. Now, I want to add something to this. If you do have a friend who is not white, they are under no obligation to relive painful experiences and educate you and tell you all about them, right? First of all, it's like painful and stressful and emotionally draining to talk about that stuff. But also, there's that risk that you'll be like, nuh-uh, right? Or react in some other way that will cast doubt on their lived experiences or belittle them. And even my own reaction to my friend Anna, when she told me what had happened, I was like, what? Really? No. And I didn't mean to say I don't believe you, but my first response was incredulity, where I was just like, huh? What? No. And that's not a good or loving or healthy or helpful response. So here we go. I'm going to, stop myself from talking further. I love all of you, my students, and I'm praying for you. And if you want to process stuff and talk about stuff and genuinely are interested in asking questions and trying to understand, I would love to do that with you. I'm not interested in arguing, okay? Actually, I don't really know what is to argue here. This is a true story that happened. This is, but yeah.